Education funding has been an important topic of debate in Santa Fe this year during the 60-day legislative session. Our producer Sarah Gustavus sat down this week with two local experts to hear what education programs and strategies are showing the greatest promise, and how lawmakers could use the latest research to inform decisions during political debate.
Joining me this week is Dr. Mariah Heredia-Griego, Director of the UNM Center for Education Policy Research. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Also, Ian Esquivel, Executive Director of the Learning Alliance New Mexico. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I want to start with you, Ian. What have you heard from students and community members recently about what they want to see in their schools, what their priorities are?
So we're really excited. We just wrapped up an outreach effort where we talked to more than 4,000 New Mexicans in the state from across different communities, and we worked closely with CPRA to analyze some of the things that they said. And again, this project was done through the Every Student Succeeds Act. Part of that act encourages stakeholder engagement and listening to local folks to learn what they want to see different in their public education system. And from that, we really focused on standards, assessment, teacher accountability, and school accountability. And we heard from people in terms of what they want to see in those areas.
Who are stakeholders in ESSA?
Yes, I think stakeholders, anybody who has an interest in public education, we really focused our efforts on students, family members, community members, and educators. We wanted to hear directly from those groups because I think often the public education system impacts them the most, right? So it's this idea of how are we listening to the end users of a system and having that feedback play back into how we make that system better.
Mariah, the Every Student Succeeds Act replaces No Child Left Behind. What are some of the key changes or different areas of focus that people should know about in New Mexico right now?
Well, ESSA really actually made a big shift away from federal control that we saw under No Child Left Behind to more local, state-level control over what's happening in education. And so I think in our conversations with our partners in the community, such as the New Mexico Learning Alliance and others, there's really a great opportunity to be able to shape what's happening in our state at the local level if leveraged appropriately and timely, right? There are some leeways with innovation around assessment and accountability and state measures, but there's also some guidelines and some within scope. So it's not an open free-for-all, but we do see some nuggets of opportunity where we can actually open some doors for some really thoughtful conversation about what are really this knowledge, skills, and attitudes and behaviors that students need to be able to be successful in college, career, and life.
The Center for Education Policy Research looks at lots of different areas of education, everything from pre-K all the way through graduation and higher ed and beyond. What are some of the promising opportunities that you see right now that could be maybe expanded in New Mexico or lawmakers could focus on as an area for investment?
Sure. So I think one of the most promising efforts that we're seeing, we're a part of a collective group, a partnership with United Way of Central New Mexico through Mission Graduate. It is a college to career initiative, and we're seeing these pop up all over the country. These are actually cross-sector partnerships that bring together educators, education administrators, institutions with business partners, community members, parents, nonprofits, folks across our community, and really thinking differently about how do they engage and help solve some of our biggest problems and challenges in our community as it pertains to education, and really putting students and families at the center of that conversation. And it takes an effort from our entire community in order to make some of these shifts. So these are some of the efforts that we're seeing actually pull together all of these questions. We do pockets of research all along the continuum, and I think what's most challenging for us is that sometimes those questions are asked in isolation. And what we'd like to see as researchers and at our policy center really is continuing to make connections, connecting the dots across all of these initiatives, thinking differently about how we partner strategically and actually create impact together as a cross-sector partnership.
And Ian, what about the voice of students? What students say makes them feel engaged and successful in school?
So we've heard from a sampling of students, right? And I'm always very cautious to speak on behalf of students. I would encourage anybody to go have a conversation with a student, be it your own student or maybe someone in your neighborhood, to gain your own information from that. But in terms of what we've heard from some of the students we've connected with, I think students are really excited when they have relevant education if they are in a classroom where they see how this connects the dots to real life application. And I think we heard that in our feedback as well. We've also heard from students who are excited to show up to school because maybe they have a positive relationship with someone at that school. There's a social component with their friends that they like to come to school for that, but there's also a social component with adults in that school. They might really like a teacher or an administrator. That makes a huge difference. And then one of the other things that we've heard is the importance of extracurricular activities, arts, music, sports. All these things can really motivate students to get up in the morning and say, I got another hard day of school, but it's worth it because I also get to play guitar or I get to do some art with my friends.
Absolutely. One of the things also when we talk about education in New Mexico, I think it's important to consider that education is part of our community, is also part of some of the challenges that our families are experiencing. We're a high poverty state. What do you think are some ways where schools can better integrate addressing the needs that families have beyond just education, but needs after the school day?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you're thinking about it. And I think more people are thinking about it in terms of how do we holistically support students. And there are a lot of wraparound services. Sometimes it takes the form of a community school model. But maybe for other schools, it just looks like more social workers. We've heard a lot from teachers who say, we want to do a good job with our students, but there's only so much we can do. We only have so much capacity. And our students come into the classroom with a lot of gifts, but they also come into the classroom with some challenges.
You mentioned community schools. What's that?
So a community school is a type of model that, again, really tries to focus on some of the different things that help students. So maybe there's a health clinic at that school. Maybe there's some after-school tutoring. Maybe there's a way to connect students to some job opportunities. There are a number of different models in our state, including the ABC community schools or even communities in schools up in Santa Fe. But again, it's providing those wraparound services and that holistic support for students.
Mariah, does the research show that this is effective at raising student performance, test scores, graduation rates? Is there a connection there?
Yes, so we've done some research around community school models, and what we're finding is that it's a collection of efforts, right? There's not just one silver bullet. There's not just one program that's going to actually make the big major difference. But what we are seeing is through community schools, students, both children and families, are able to better access the resources and the supports that they need that may not currently exist within the current rigid model of education. So this is really accessing, if they need access to food stamps or to other social support programs, parents can actually figure out a way to navigate that system with liaisons at community schools. So that's really thinking about how we blur the line between education and community.
Yeah. One of the things that we're looking at for the People, Power, and Democracy coverage and our education coverage this week is kind of depoliticizing this conversation. And ethnic studies has been very politicized in other states, but you're interested in looking at how ethnic studies might help students, might connect students in the same way that relationships and other programs work. What are you curious about right now for ethnic studies?
Sure. So at the big level, right, we're really interested in some of the social emotional outcomes for students. And a piece of that is social civic ability to relate with other people, understanding history and culture, respecting diversity, and other people, right? And we know that that's what students need to be successful. And one of the efforts that we've seen nationally and has been shown some success in other states has been ethnic studies programs to help support. We see outcomes in terms of shifts towards high school graduation, even attendance, as Ian mentioned, engaging students in something that they feel is relevant or they see themselves reflected or their families or their culture and their identity reflected in a curriculum in some significant way. So we've seen those benefits in other school settings in other states, and so we're really interested and curious about how that's going to roll out. Albuquerque Public Schools recently authorized the implementation of ethnic studies at the high school level, and so we're partnering with interdisciplinary researchers at UNM to examine how that rolls out, how it plays out, what the implementation is like, and long term, what are the outcomes? Are we going to see something different in terms of not just academic outcomes, but actually resiliency and also thinking about health outcomes, long-term health outcomes for students. We know that education can be correlated directly to long-term health outcomes. We want to know what type of education can actually sometimes make a difference.
State lawmakers have a very tough road ahead in figuring out the state budget, and there's a debate going on right now about whether to maintain education funding or make additional cuts. What do you wish lawmakers would talk about more, especially related to education research?
I think, our legislators have a humongous task in front of them. We know that the conversations are very focused on the funding and the need to actually adequately fund the classroom and the essential services and supports that students need. I think the biggest challenge that they're up against is actually being able to fund those things in a meaningful way. So that means that it's not enough just to put a teacher in a classroom, but a high quality teacher. And what does that mean in terms of how that correlates to teacher pay, the supports that a teacher receives in the classroom, being able to supplies? That even means facilities. We have schools across our state that have deferred maintenance issues. And so thinking about physical learning spaces, those are huge costs, as well as the additional support programs. So for example, the K3+ extended school year sort of model, we participated in a study with Utah State University, and what we found was what was most critical is not, yes, it's the number of days to help prevent the summer slide, the loss of learning over the summer, but it was also a consistency around that teacher that will carry the student across into the next academic year. So if they're doing K3+ between second and third grade, that the teacher that's working them and helping them to continue to catch up during the summer is also the teacher that will carry them through third grade. So they know where that student is and they don't have to start over. So those are critical things about how a program is implemented, and those are costly.
Ian, final thoughts from you on what you wish lawmakers would consider?
So I'm very biased, and I would say, I would encourage lawmakers to talk to more students, talk to the students in their communities, and I'm guessing a lot of the legislatures do that, but I would just encourage to do more. I think Mariah's group does such a good job collecting data, and one of the important pieces of that data is stories. Right? So how are we learning from our students in terms of what is it like to sit in your classroom and experience what you experience every single day, and how does that inform the policy that we're making? Because I think that connection between policy and implementation can be a tough one. So I would encourage legislators to go talk to more students.
Certainly more that we can cover, but we appreciate you being here this week.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.